Hello, everyone. My name is Isabelle Pujol. I'm the founder and director of Pluribus. So welcome to this series of free webinar that we are hosting once a month. Pluribus is a global consultancy. We are working with global organizations. Really our mission is to support individuals, teams, organizations to succeed through the values of diversity and inclusion. So we are very happy today to host this webinar. It's going to last 1 hour. It is being recorded, so you will have the chance to either watch it again, or we will be able to send this link to all our networks. The reason why we are hosting these webinars is because we are very happy end of November 2006 to create Pluribus. So it means that we just celebrating our 10th anniversary. And as a way to symbolically highlight this key milestone, we published a book called Inclusion Around the Clock. And this book is a collective experience because, in fact, there are 13 different authors in this book. So every chapter has been written by one Pluribus associate or a friend of Pluribus to really talk about the different dimensions of diversity and inclusion, anything that has some links with inclusion and respect. So now we're hosting the 7th webinar, as we started in December, the first one. And I'm particularly happy to welcome Joanne Nihom and Marijn Shrieken to be our special guest speakers. Why I'm very happy? Well, first of all, because it shows that we are hosting international webinars. Joanne is based in Israel, Marijn is based in Amsterdam, and I'm currently in Brussels. I know that we have viewers from various parts of the world, and for those of you who participated to other webinars, you noticed that we changed from hosting the programs on Friday to Thursday to ensure that the people from the Middle East could also attend, as Friday and Saturday is their weekend days. So now it will happen all the time on the last Thursday of the month. So delighted to have both of you, Joanne and Marijn, talking about your chapter, and the chapter is really about DropDrop Network. I will not say more about what is the DropDrop Network. Maybe I could say how we met. I remember that we met in Israel, and through Marijn and another friend of us, Daniel Dove, who gave me the contact of Marijn, who gave me the contact of Joanne. And I remember the first opportunity when, together with Joanne, I was hearing about your vision, your mission, your dream, and I felt like I was feeling very connected to the idea, and that's why Pluribus and myself, we really wanted to sponsor your project. I'm also would like, before I hand over to Joanne, I would like to say that if you look at the bottom of your screen, you have a little Q&A button. So if you have any questions, we will look at them toward the end of the webinar. Otherwise, you could also send us some emails if you have some specific questions. We will be happy to directly, personally come back to you. So delighted to have this conversation about the DropDrop Network, and I first hand over to Joanne, who is based in Israel.
Thank you very much, Isabel. Shalom, everybody. It's a bit strange to talk to people I can't see, but I feel you're all around us. First of all, I'd like to thank Isabel and Pluribus for giving me the opportunity, but also to support my dream. And I remember when we met a few years ago in Israel, there was this immediate click. And since then, Isabel, you've been supporting me. We are in, we talk once a while through Skype, and you're a good friend. I also like to thank Sarah. When I heard the word and read the word web seminar, I got all nervous. I'm not very technical. And Sarah calmed me down, and here I am doing my first web seminar. So to both of you, thank you very much. I like to start with reading a few sentences from the book Inclusion Around the Clock, and then I'll continue with my story. Drops fall and cause ripples that then become waves in ever-growing circles. North, south, east, west, Bedouins, Druze, Christian and Muslim Arabs, Reform and Orthodox Jews, a mosaic of people, customs and taste, a mixed society, never taken for granted. I'll start with my story. I was born in a Jewish Zionist family in Holland, and Israel was always part of our lives. I don't remember anything else. We always went here on a holiday, and I think from the day I was born, my biggest dream was to live here, because of lots of reasons. I only moved here 11, 12 years ago. I moved 11 years ago, and I ended up in the north of the country. We're living here about 10 minutes from the Lebanon border. A few months after I arrived here, not because I arrived here, but because of the things that are happening in the Middle East, the second Lebanon war started. And for the first time in my life, I found myself in a situation I did not understand. In a war situation, there were katyushas above my head. We spent weeks in shelters. And during that time, I started writing a blog for friends and family in Holland. And that's how I ended up in journalism, because one of those stories was published in one of the main newspapers in Holland. And I don't know, I suddenly became a journalist writing about the country I love and the country I live in. I live in a kibbutz, in a Jewish community, and we're surrounded by Arab villages. Now, I thought I knew the country after all these holidays we spent here, but once I started settling down here, I realized that I hardly knew the country. And I became fascinated by it. I do my shopping in the Arab villages. I have friends there. I made them during the years. I can walk there around freely. We live together. And because of my work, because of the articles I had to write, I also traveled through the country and I met all kinds of people. And every single time I realized that on a human level, we live together. And that on a political level, there is the, we call it in Hebrew balagan, the war, the horrible things. And somehow, the people are able, and it's in music, it's in cooking together, it's in the hospitals, it's in the general transport. It's everywhere. We're living together. And somehow we're able to stand above all the problems on a human level, and wonderful things are happening. I like to start with two examples to give a little bit of taste of what I meet here on a daily basis. One of them is a mixed school. It's called Hand in Hand. It's a school where Jewish and Arab children join together. They speak Hebrew and Arabic, and in front of every lesson there is a Jewish teacher and an Arabic teacher, and the lesson is in Hebrew and Arabic. I joined a computer lesson, and there were behind every computer there were two children sitting, an Arab and a Jewish kid, and they were changing Arabic and Hebrew so fast that I didn't even understand what they were doing. And it was incredible how natural they were together, and they talked. It was like they talked Hebrew and Arabic, and everybody understood each other. And I started interviewing the children, and they didn't understand my questions. For them, it was natural. There was not something special about what they were doing. One of the amazing things there, it is a country with a lot of history. And in 1948, when Israel was established, the Independence Day, for the Jewish part of Israel, that's a day of celebration every year. And without going into politics, for the Arab people, it's one of the most black days in their life. But at this school, they celebrated and somehow this day together. Able to find the right balance, talking about one side and the other side, and giving the children a safe feeling instead of hostile against each other. Actually, I was there when they celebrated it. It was like a celebration for everybody. On this subject, I also went to a kindergarten in Jaffo by a Jewish women organization worldwide, WITSO. And this kindergarten is also mixed Arab and Jewish families. And when I came to visit them, it was around this Independence Day of Israel. And they showed me that they found a way to bring the families together. What did they do? They asked every family to make a house, because we all live here. Israel is our house, and it doesn't matter if you're Jewish or Arabic, we are living here together. So there were like 30 houses standing there, beautiful houses with beautiful people in it. And every house had its own story. I'm not saying that it's all sunshine and happiness here. Of course, there are problems. But there is an enormous, strong base of mutual trust. And the sad thing is that through the media, you get a completely different impression. And that's why when I realized, because I started writing about all these subjects, all these projects, because there are many, many more, I started to write about it, and newspapers were not interested. And it was not because I'm a bad writer, but it's because the media is mainly interested in negative stories, which means that we're all a little bit brainwashed, because why should we not believe what we read or see? So a little bit out of frustration, but also because I really, really believe that I should do something with the knowledge I acquired during the years, I decided to start a foundation which is called DropDrop Network. And my aim is to bring the stories, and not only in Israel, but Israel is a big example. But of course, all over the world, there are examples where people who are supposedly not talking to each other or fighting with each other are living together, to show all these stories into the world. Because I believe that if people start realizing what happens even here in the Middle East on such a wonderful level, that it might change, it's kind of mind-setting change. Now, it's not an easy story. I've started a foundation 2 or 3 years ago, and it's very difficult to find the right tone, and also to find the right people to help me. One of the things now I like to give an example of how I think that why this happens. Let's last week there was a huge terrorist attack in Israel. There are terrorist attacks all over the world all the time. Last week there was a big one here in Israel. I don't support terror attacks. Of course, I don't like them at all. But the way people react to these terror attacks it's almost as aggressive as the attacks. And I find it very difficult that people are not able, like we're all running after a thought or what somebody is saying or what somebody is saying. Nobody starts thinking, what is the reason behind the trouble? And I'm not talking about a political level, I'm talking about a human level. Now, if I take my parents who went through the Second World War, they're both, thank God, still alive. They live in Israel. If I try to explain them the way I think, it's almost impossible, because they went through a horrible war, and they just want to live in peace, and they are not able, with all respect, to think differently. It's a generation who went through a lot. But we today are a different generation, and there are no borders anymore in our world. Look what we're doing here. We can all meet, and we're all over the world. So if someone can change the situation in the world, it's us together, by bonding, not by hating each other, even if you don't understand the other person. I like to give a very simple example. When I arrived here, my husband is responsible for the water in our village, and he works with a lot of Arab people, and they started inviting us. Now, I eat vegetarian and I don't drink coffee, and Arab people eat meat and they drink a lot of coffee. In the beginning, out of politeness, of course, I joined them, although I didn't like it. But through the years, with respect and understanding, even though we don't understand each other all the time because we think differently, they started understanding that I have a different way of living. And sorry. And last Ramadan, we were always invited everywhere, and they all made special dishes so that I could join the meal. And they don't ask me anymore if I like to have coffee. There's always tea for me. So it's perhaps a very small drop in a big ocean, but I believe this is the only way to do it. And we will never talk politics, but it's not necessary. It's really not necessary. But we share something mutual, and that is love for our life, love for each other, and respect. And I think on that level is my DropDrop manifest based. And while I was preparing in my head this talk to all of you, I realized that I'm still on a journey. I know that I want to get my message out in the world. And I know it will work, and I believe in it. But I need your help, because I can't do it on my own, and I need people all over the world, because I believe that's the only way how to do it. So I hope we will have time to talk a little bit with each other, and who knows what this web seminar will bring. DropDrop Manifest. I like to finish with some more sentences out of the book. 1 second. DropDrop Network is about personal connections. It's about heroes and angels, big and small. In the end, we're all human beings working together. It's time for a positive message that isn't exaggerated or naive to offset negative, but simply because that's what real life is like. It's about mutual understanding. It's about you and me and our lives. And that's DropDrop Network. I'd like to introduce to you now Marijn Shrieken, who helped me in the beginning, the first two and a half years with DropDrop Network. And I can introduce her a little bit, but she will mostly do the rest herself. We met years ago. Marijn is a fashion designer. At that time, I had a fashion house. She started working for me, and we were friends. And then we were out of touch for a long time. And when at a certain moment we were in touch again. And I think the best is if Marijn will continue now and tell her story. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Joanne. I'll take it over from here. Yes, well, we met several years ago. I know Joanne for a very long time now. And so Joanne moved over to Israel, and she invited me quite often, come over, it's just a really great place here. You can see where I live and blah, blah. And every time I politely said no. And the reason why was because all of the news, there was just daily bad news headlines about terrorist attacks, about war, about what, name it. It was only negative news about Israel. And I thought, why would I go to a country where there's war every time and there's behind every tree a terrorist who's trying to kill me? So, and after a couple of rejections, Joanne said, listen, you rejected so many times. What's going on? And then I explained, and I didn't want to offend her, of course, and said, okay, listen, I'm scared. I don't want to go to your country. And then she said, well, listen, I live here, Do you really think that I want to live in the country when my life is in danger 24/7? And then I thought, all right. So there was for me the first awareness that there might be something different. And then I decided to go there. I bought a ticket, and I visited Joanne, and I stayed there for 8 days, and I experienced a really beautiful time. I met a lot of beautiful people, and actually we went to even to Ramallah, so behind the wall, and we had a great conversation together with a Palestinian police officer, with some Canadian guy, with, of course, Joanne and me. So there was this whole mixture of culture and religion, and we had a great time. And not that the stories that we read in the newspapers were a lie or something, but there's another side too. And when I got home, I actually felt really angry. I felt betrayed by the newspapers and my social media that they only come with those negative stories. And I actually think there should be a disclaimer underneath every article in a newspaper that says, listen, this is just one side of the story. There's a lot more. Check that out too, please. And so I felt betrayed. And that was for me a great awareness of how badly I was manipulated by the news. And that for me was the moment to decide to support Joanne in bringing DropDrop into the world. And why I think it's so special and why I think it's so good, because it's such a simple concept. The concept is, bringing news about people who overcome their fears and their angers and decide to work together. And what's doing that to me, that it brings me actually hope, with all those stories, all the bad news constantly. I mean, look at the world. It's just, there are beautiful things going on, but if you look into the news and into what's going on the internet, you would think that the world is a really bad place, and it's not. And you have to be really use your head, your mind to stay true to yourself and think, okay, there's a lot more beauty going on than only what I'm reading here. And so when I read those stories, what Joanne is bringing, it gives me hope and inspiration. If they can do it, then I can do it. Why should I be angry with my neighbor or whoever? Maybe I'm already sort of proof that DropDrop Network is actually really working, because it helped me to have a different view on the news and to look broader and wider. And it helps me to, actually, when I read those and hear about the stories that Joanne is bringing, that it gives me hope that, and actually see that people are able to connect besides all the terrible things they've gone through, and that it actually, it brings us back to compassion, to our hearts, to humans, to who we truly are in the essence, as being one, as one world. Actually, that's what I believe in. And I think that DropDrop is a very good way of supporting this. And I love it so much that these people in those stories show this deep willingness to understand the other. And I think that's really, truly needed if you want to live together. And that's what these people are showing us. And I just love the stories, and I want to be fed with the stories on a daily basis, and not just the bad news. So that is what I like so much about DropDrop, and it affects me actually on daily life, because I now read the news on a different level. Actually, I train my brain to look at it differently. And because that's so important to me, and this knowledge and understanding of how it works, a couple of years ago, I decided to change my life, and I decided to do another study. And the study is called Somatic Experiencing, which is a method for trauma healing. And it's based on actually our nerve system. And the knowledge of how our nerve system works seems to be really helpful to also understand the effect of reading the news on our brain. And actually, it's not just an idea or a concept. It's actually scientifically based, that when your brain is constantly fed with bad news, it does change your brain. And we've got a Dutch scientist, a neuroscientist, Victor Lama, who's done a lot of research, and he actually literally said that what will be really good for us is feeding our brain with the opposite of all the bad news, namely the other side of news, the good news. So it's not just some idea, it really works. And so what I do now today is training my own brain, and I train people, telling them, doing a little bit of psychoeducation about how our brain functions, and so that we can slow down our nerve system. Because when you read the news, and when you are aware of it, that it might fear you. I mean, what about the terrorist attacks in Paris and in Brussels? For me, that was quite close, and I could have been really scared. And what I read from on social media, people were really, really, really very scared. And some terrible reactions to that. I thought it was really, really a lot, to be honest. And for me, it was really important to make a choice and think differently about it, and to understand, okay, I read the news, and I was physically aware of how my nerve system was getting into a negative affected state. And I learned how to regulate myself and become more down and more clear. And that was so helpful, because one of the effects of being afraid, for instance, is that when your nerve system is getting into this state, immediately it starts polarization. So you are going to think in black and white. There's just no room for nuances. There's just no room for any color. I'm not even talking about nuances in gray, black and white mixture is gray. No, there are just millions of beautiful colors in the world. You don't see them anymore. If you're in a state of fear or anger or freeze, because that's actually the three states of our nervous system. And becoming aware of that state is just so helpful in self-regulate and looking different to the news, and therefore looking more open and brightful to the world. And I think that is very helpful. And according to what other people say, when I've taught this information, they think, wow, so this is how it works. Phew, now I understand more. And people really, truly look differently. And I think that's so interesting. And therefore, my data work is directly connected to DropDrop Network, and therefore I think directly connected to Pluribus in making a world with inclusion. That we're all one, and that we can help and share each other. So I'm a big fan of DropDrop Network. That's what I would say. So yeah. For now, that I have to share about DropDrop and my daily life work, and I think it all connects beautifully. And I truly believe in both. I truly believe in the work that Joanne is doing, because I experience it personally. I just am aware of how it's affecting me, and together with the knowledge that I have now, of how my nervous system works, or our nervous system works, I'm also able to educate other people, and even on a much deeper level, I can help people who are into trauma and help them release their nerve system, and well, coach them into self-regulation. So
thank you.
yes, you're welcome.
Well,
Yes.
and I forgot to give one example which I think is shows the best, and I completely forgot to mention it.
Okay, so please mention. I just noticed that there are some questions. So maybe after your sharing, then I could look at the questions maybe for both of you.
Okay, good. In Israel they have it's called the Parents Circle, and it's a group of people. They're Arabs and Jews who lost through war or terror attacks, either father, son, daughter, or both. But the families lost part of the family, and they form a group together. So they there can be a family with a son who was killed because he did a terror attack, and there can be the family who was hit because of the terror attack, and they started a foundation together, and they try through mutual understanding and love to be together, and they do. They travel all over the world. They go to schools in Israel to show that hatred does not solve it. And I think this is one of the most beautiful examples, because these people are sad. They really lost a close one, and they're able to go above hate and work together on a better world. That's what they do. So I think that's one of the most incredible examples in Israel.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for adding this very powerful and incredible stories. Yeah. Well, I have to say I'm very touched and moved by both your testimonies. You know, Joanne talking about your personal story and how you get involved with creating the DropDrop Network and sharing your stories, and also Marijn, sharing your involvement and your personal fear at the very beginning, and how this completely changed by hearing a different side of the stories. And also thank you for this piece of research on neuroscience. If you have any documentary on that, maybe we could also share this piece of research with all the people who are interested, because it's indeed quite impactful. Before I looked at the questions, maybe I would like also to share a story. I've been involved myself for a number of years, probably 12, 13, 14 years now, in co-leading programs for women to help and to support women to reconnect with their inner voice, with their authenticity. And I've been co-facilitating these kind of programs in various parts of the world. And my intention, my dream, is to be able to host this program with women in Israel, but women from various backgrounds, from Christian, Jewish, Muslim, people from all different faiths, having the opportunity to just be themselves, to connect, to hear from each other. And I really believe in all these very small steps. And so even the name drop, a drop is nothing. But a drop and a drop, you know, there is this story with if you have a wall of bricks and you have a little drop, you think nothing will happen. But if you have a drop, another drop, another drop, and an accumulation of drops, then the wall will collapse. So if you look at it from the other side, you could say that the accumulation of positive drops will have a macro impact, hopefully, in our world. Because what we do at Pluribus in the organizations, because this is the world we know, the corporate world, is to really create a better understanding between people who are different, but also have similarities. And we sometimes forget that we are all human and we have more similarities than differences. And I think that when people are fearful, when they are afraid, they are on the defensive mode. And this is when misunderstanding starts to happen. And this is when frustration and, you know, wrong communication will happen. So our role, what we want to do, and I think we all want to play the role of change agents, is to be able to have communication, to have conversations, so people can learn from each other, have some mutual respect. And I think, again, the DropDrop Network could be a very positive platform for sharing, spreading good project, good ideas, good positive examples when things can happen, but not necessarily big things, small things. Yeah. So let me look at the question. Let's see if there are some specific questions. So there is one question. Are there any newspaper out there that only try to promote positive media stories?
Good one.
Are you aware of anything like that?
I'm laughing, but
there are some newspapers. Marijn, I think for 6 months did. Perhaps you answer the question, Marijn.
Yeah, well, I did a research on that because when we started DropDrop Network, we were not sure about what form we were gonna make, and then we were looking for, okay, we could maybe make a magazine, and so we did a research on if there would be anything like it, you know. Are there any colleagues already in the world? And I think I looked into thousands of magazines and newspapers that are published in the world. And there were only, I think, about 9 or 10, just really 2 hands full of all the thousands of magazines. They were sort of going into this, and most of them were also political in the essence. Or spiritual, yes. So, but just like this, these really beautiful stories, no, I could not find anything, which was a really big shock to me, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I have another question, and I think it's more for Joanne. What is the future you imagine for DropDrop Network?
If DropDrop Network will be able to change the if DropDrop Network will be able to change a few people to think differently, I'll be very happy, but that's not the answer to the question. I hope that one day there'll be a book on every table in the world. That's my dream, with my stories.
Okay. So is it about inspiring people to be more trustfully about the positivity in our world?
Yeah, and I think we've talked about about everything in a website. We are going to start with a website now, but it's not enough because not everybody goes on internet, and it comes and goes. It's a fast world, this internet world. So a book, not with thousands of stories, but just a few stories that touch the heart, and that's on your table, and that's a subject of talking. I think that's what I still dream about, and I think that's the future. That's the, if you ask what's the future, that's the future.
Thank you. Thank you. There is a very simple question, which is, could you explain why you choose the name DropDrop Network?
Because it is so difficult to put my thoughts in a good story, because I have so many thoughts about it, and I noticed that my story is changing every time. Not really, but that it was difficult to focus. We started working with Bart Jan, and Sea Roots in Amsterdam, and he helped us to. He made a manifest for us, and he helped me to focus, and he wrote down the story, and then he came with the name, because he believes that, just how you just explained it, it's small drops, but these small drops can really change the world.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. So practically, at the moment you have, I mean, if the people who are interested in the DropDrop network, what's the next step for them? Do they connect to a newsletter or blog? What's the next step?
They can contact me. Perhaps you can send them my email address. Mm-hmm. We're busy with the website. A friend of mine decided to give me a website, so we're busy, or giving to DropDrop, sorry, the website, and we're busy with that. I'm looking for people who can blog around the world, show where they live, doesn't matter where they live, show how different groups live together. So I need a lot of help. So just give my email. And I have every half year I send out a newsletter. But even though I started with it 2 years ago, it's still in progress. So I would be very happy if people would be in touch with me and contact me or help me in any way.
Okay, well, do you want to give your email address? Do you want to just now give your email address?
Can you send it to? Perhaps it's easier
because as this video, this webinar is going to be recorded and it will be sent to a lot of people. Maybe if you give just now, you know, out loud your email address, it will be part of this video recording.
Okay, Joanne Nihom, strudel, bestek, int.net.
Okay.
That's my address.
Okay, we will make sure that we will forward this.
And I have, if people like to find me on Facebook, we have a page, DropDrop Network.
Maybe that's easier as a first contact. Yeah. And sorry, Marijn, you wanted to add something?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. All right. Well, I just realized it's already 3:20 in Brussels. I mean, in continental time, so already nearly 4:30 in Israel. So, I mean, it has been a real delight, really, to have both of you sharing your inspirations, sharing your stories. I can really clearly see the connection of our common goal, which is to be part of creating a more positive world where everyone can feel respected, valued, listened. I think, especially nowadays, we need to not to underestimate the impact of small steps.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to wait for a big revolution or a big change. I think if we can be congruent, in coherence with our own values, which are to be inclusive, to be respectful, to have conversations. I think that's the point, not to be afraid of having conversation. And this is really what we do, again, in the corporate world, in the workplace, is to be able to share our stories, to talk about, who we are, who we truly are, really, again, going back to this notion of authenticity. So I'm really thankful and grateful for what you have shared with us today, and I only wish DropDrop Network long life and a lot of beautiful stories, impactful, positive, inspiring stories to help us, all of us, to believe in our world and to, step by step, creating a better world to live. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much, Isabel.
Thank you.
Yes,
And
thank you.
thank you, Marijn. Thank you, Joanne. Again, if there are any other questions, we will look at them and we will reply individually in case there are some specific key questions. I just noted there is another one. Someone is asking, can I still ask a question? Yes, you can still ask a question, but I don't see the question. So if you are still online, you could ask another question. Let's see if this new question is coming in. What I would like to do in the remaining few minutes that we have is to say a few things. First of all, if you want to have more information about Pluribus, whether it's some of our projects, our news, our piece of research, our studies, stories, etc., projects, you can always follow us on our Facebook, Twitter. It's called Pluribus News, @Pluribus News. We also have a YouTube channel @Pluribus News, where every single webinar have been recorded. So I mentioned earlier that today is the 7th one. So you will be able, on that channel, the YouTube channel @Pluribus News, you will be able to look and watch the webinars. Do not hesitate to follow us on Twitter and Facebook. The next webinar will take place on Thursday, the 31st of August, again at 2:30 p.m. Brussels, Paris time. This will be hosted by Daniel Stein, who is our Senior Pluribus Associate and Director for the UK and Ireland. Daniel is going to talk about his chapter that links innovation and inclusion. How do you engage your employee, and how, when they are feeling included and engaged, what's the connection and the impact on driving innovation? So another interesting topic. So we will be able to send out the invitation and the registration link in the next few days. The date to remember is 31st of August on a Thursday at 2:30. So I can see now the question, and we have another few minutes. The question is, I have experience in Northern Ireland before the peace process. Do you learn from past experience and integrate it? So is it something, for example, Joanne or Marijn, that you would be interested in integrating the stories that happen in the past?
Yeah, why not? I mean, of course, because I think if those stories, well, if what has happened, if it's been integrated or if it's been solved on a personal level, then there's this peace moment, I think. But when it's not, I think it's very important to stay, to go into that. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's been in the past or not. If it's not solved, if you've not come together, if there's not been some kind of compassion and that there's some relief in the event, then really need it. I truly believe in that. Yeah.
Yes. And there is, sorry, I'm just going to interrupt because there is another piece in the question. They said they used self-help groups to combine victims from both sides into conversations with each other.
That's what's happening in Israel.
Yeah.
That's what's happening in Israel. And I think the person who asked the question about Ireland, I think even though this, I don't know if it's a man or a woman, went through this horrible process, I think he or she can bring this message forward that, you know, even going through such a horrible thing, I think even in Ireland they live together. It's on the political level where there is the fighting and the ugliness. It's not on a human level.
Yeah.
Good. So it seems that the answer to the question is a big yes. We could learn from the past, and all this wisdom and all these examples on, as you said, you know, at a human level is very critical. So I'm going to close. I don't know if there is the last few words, Joanne. Yes.
There is a beautiful saying here on one of the walls in the museums: live the present. No, remember the past, live the present, and trust the future.
Yeah, beautiful.
That's the best quote to close our webinar, which is focusing on peace. Peace in our world, peace in ourselves, peace in our hearts. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Thank you. And
Shalom.
Good luck to DropDrop Network. Okay. So I'm going to stop the